Hi everyone, I'm Ruth Wasserman Lande. Today's November 7th, 2024. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office. We're live on Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and available afterwards wherever you get your podcasts. Please start submitting questions in the chat, and as always, like and subscribe to help us reach a wider audience. Gazans do not lack food. Gaza's humanitarian crisis is that Hamas still wages war and holds 101 hostages in terror dungeons. Israeli troops are operating in northern Gaza to stop Hamas from regrouping, while at the same time, Israel is sending hundreds of truckloads of aid every single day. Aid is also coming in from Egypt and Jordan. Israel now has 3 separate points for pushing aid into northern Gaza: Erez, the so-called Erez 2 on the beach, and Gate 96 to Gaza City's south. There is so much aid that international aid organizations simply are not keeping up. 675 truck worths of food and other things are awaiting collection on the Gazan side of the border. Now, I know I've said this several times before, but the international arena keeps on with the mantra and the fake news that Israel is preventing humanitarian aid from flowing into Gaza, that it is purposefully starving the Gazan population. So I'm saying it again. There is no lack of humanitarian aid in Gaza. There are remnants of Hamas which are stealing it and selling it for astronomical prices. And this is currently their only source of funding for recruiting more youngsters to die absolutely senseless deaths for them. Over and above this, Israel brought enough polio vaccines for 4.8 million Gazans, as well as enough vaccines for other diseases to inoculate 5.6 million Gazans. Yesterday, Israel announced 1.1 million polio vaccines had been administered in a second campaign, reaching 90% of Gazan children. Together with the UAE, EU, and WHO, Israel helped 800 Gazans leave the Strip to get medical care in Jordan, Romania, and the UAE, as well as the United States of America. 231 Gazan patients and caregivers flew out of an Israeli airport just this week. But while all this is happening and while Gaza is inundated with aid, our hostages are left high and dry in absolute starvation conditions. Released and rescued hostages told us that the conditions in Hamas captivity were dire. Anyone concerned about a humanitarian crisis should be demanding to get our hostages back. Now, on a different but similar issue, have you heard Hezbollah's recent plan for ending the war? Naim Qassem, the current head of the organization, said that there is only one thing that can stop the war, and that is the battlefield. So no ceasefire on the agenda. Well, then let's examine what's going on in the battlefield. Israel eliminated much of Hezbollah's command structure, including his predecessor and his predecessor too. Israel has been taking apart Hezbollah fortifications along the border, blowing up bunkers and tunnels every day. Israel has been striking Hezbollah's weapons and the warehouses in northern Lebanon and Syria, places where many of Hezbollah's terrorists have fled to. In fact, Qassem made his speech not from Lebanon, but from his new headquarters in Iran. It doesn't sound like Hezbollah's new boss is in touch with what's really going on the ground. But other voices in Lebanon are also asking for the war to continue. Lebanon's Christian groups who oppose Hezbollah in the context of Lebanon's sectorial politics say they hope Hezbollah keeps fighting so that Israel destroys every single one of them once and for all. You see, Hezbollah is the face of Iran's occupation of Lebanon. Hezbollah's 16,000 Iranian rockets, missiles, and drones aren't just a threat to Israel, but to the Lebanese themselves. Our hope is that this war means a safer tomorrow for both of our nations. Now, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
This is a question from Brian on YouTube. How long do you think the IDF will need to remain in Gaza?
Well, the very simple answer to your question is, first and foremost, we need to have our hostages back. That's one of the main objectives of this war in the first place. Until we have all of our hostages back, there's nothing to even talk about. That's first and foremost. But also, we have an objective to demilitarize and, in fact, dismantle completely the Hamas. And we need to make sure that that happens in order to have our civilians move back to their villages in the south of Israel and feel safe in their own homes.
This is a question from Adam on our Instagram Live. Given that the Knesset has voted to shut down UNRWA's operations due to their continued support for terror, who should take up the responsibility to help Israel deliver aid?
So first of all, this is a very big question because some people say that the IDF should do it. Other people say that other humanitarian organizations or certain people amidst the Gazans themselves should do it. This is a big question. But before that question, the IDF needs to make sure that the Hamas and the operatives, the actual terrorists, do not steal that aid. In fact, there is tons of aid just lying on the floor, lying there to be taken. And the entire world is saying that there's not enough food and medicine for the Gazan population. Why is this produce not being taken? The Hamas are preventing civilian Gazans from actually even going near the produce. And this needs to be distributed in a proper way. We have some ideas. It needs to be worked out in order for the people to properly get the food instead of Hamas stealing it.
This is a question from YouTube from Charles, who says, I live at the confrontation line and we get missile and UAV alerts every day. Will the new defense minister have a plan of action to reduce this threat? Is there a change with the new defense minister?
So the new defense minister has not yet said what he's planning to do and if there will be a change. But those who are actually waging this war, a defense against the terrorists, is the army, the IDF, the same army, the same chief of staff. And the importance is to make sure that no rockets are being sent. In fact, one rocket was sent just this morning again to the south of Israel. In the north, every single day, there are rockets, tens, if not hundreds of rockets being sent on a daily basis. This needs to be stopped. And what's going to stop it? The plan that you are asking about, making sure that these terrorist organizations are demilitarized, that their infrastructure and their warehouses are empty of weapons, and that they cannot do what they had been doing for over a year again.
This is a question from Adina on Instagram. Is there any word if the Gazans will accept money to return the hostages? We know the Prime Minister made an offer. Has there been any reply?
So far, very interestingly, there's been absolutely no reply. Not one Gazan citizen came forward before the offer or after the offer and said anything, showed any moral clarity about the fact that their leadership in their name was holding over 100 hostages, Israeli hostages still in captivity. And this is something which is absolutely tragic. Hopefully, some will come through and be willing to give information in return for having safe passage away from Gaza.
This is a question from Itai on Instagram. Will Israel conduct a preventive strike in case Iran tries to attack again? We're seeing reports that Iran is preparing another ballistic missile attack.
Iran has been actually the Islamic Republic of Iran, and not Iran as in the people, has been already warning Israel again and again and again that it will attack Israel. For what? For actually defending its civilians against the Islamic Republic's attacks beforehand. But never mind that. We will deal with any threat that comes to attack Israeli civilians, whether it's the Islamic Republic itself with its ballistic missiles, or whether it's the proxies or the arms of that Islamic Republic in the face of what we are seeing. It may be the Hezbollah, it may be Hamas or other proxies. But Israel will strike back. Is it going to do a preemptive attack or not? We have to wait and see. We cannot talk about it beforehand.
This is our last question today. What are you expecting from the incoming Trump administration as far as policies toward Israel?
Well, thank you for asking that. In fact, very importantly, we need a strong hand vis-a-vis the region. The region and the partners need to feel, the role players in the region need to feel that there is a strong hand and care for the region to be stable. And one example happened just 1 or 2 days ago. In fact, the Houthis, the Shiite militias provided for and equipped and trained by the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Houthis in Yemen have already said, before the president-elect came into his position officially, he was just elected, what they said is that they would stop attacking ships, which is an unbelievable development in the face of what they perceive to be a strong hand vis-a-vis the region. And that's exactly what role players in the region need to feel and see. The region is unstable. It needs stability for the well-being of the people, not only for Israel, but for Israel's neighbors as well. And I expect, but also the peoples in the region expect, and I believe that the vast majority of people living in the United States of America, and that's why they chose that particular president, expect him to have a strong hand vis-a-vis the people and the regimes in the region, particularly vis-a-vis the Islamic Republic of Iran that is creating so much havoc, but not only against Qatar as well, that is funding a lot of the terrorism, particularly Hamas, but also the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the region and in the West. Thank you so much. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. But thank you for tuning in. And we'll be back, as always, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time. Thank you.